Many doubted it would happen, but Iran has now responded to Israel. More than 200 missiles were launched on Tel Aviv last night in retaliation for the assassination of Hezbollah leader Hassan Nasrallah, along with escalatory actions by Israel. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu responded to the attack by warning that Iran will pay for this. The Middle East is now at risk of a full-fledged war. With Israel poised to expand its offensives, the world awaits with morbid anticipation. Will Israel respond and escalate, or will they show uncharacteristic restraint? What will be the regional legacy of Iran's attack on Israel? You're watching Q News Live. I'm Karim Hatem. Welcome to In Depth. In a rapidly deteriorating situation, Israel vows to retaliate against Iran as tensions rise with Hezbollah. In response to the recent escalations, world leaders urged caution, fearing a broader conflict in the Middle East.
After the assassination of Hassan Nasrallah and Ismail Haniyeh in close succession, the world has been closely anticipating the next move that might trigger a wider regional conflict. In one of its most ferocious moves, Iran has launched more than 200 missiles towards Israel, with some striking Israeli territory. This is the second such attack by Iran this year, after it fired hundreds of missiles and drones at last April. Iran, which has had previous clashes with Israel, vowed to retaliate after Nasrallah's assassination. Pentagon spokesperson Major General Pat Ryder said Iran's recent attack was twice as large as April 14 attack. It also included many more ballistic missiles, which were harder to shoot down. According to Israeli military officials, the attacks appear to be over, with no further threat from Iran for now, but it's still unclear how much damage was caused. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has warned of consequences of Iran's attack. On the other hand, Iran's Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps confirmed that 90% of projectiles hit Israeli targets with hypersonic missiles used for the first time. In the aftermath, US President Joe Biden reaffirmed his country's support for Israel and described the attack as defeated and ineffective. He had also ordered his forces in the region to aid Israel's defense by shooting down Iranian missiles. US Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin also condemned the attack and confirmed multiple interceptions by the United States. In light of the Iranian strikes, Biden administration's long effort to prevent a full-blown regional war is now being put to its most difficult test. Following Iran's latest attack, will Israel finally accept a diplomatic solution to end the long conflict, or does it insist on sparking an all-out war?
An opinion piece by Israeli writer Rami Simni for Yadda'ut Ahronot claims that Iran took the bait and presented a historic opportunity for Israel to reshape the dynamics of the Middle East. He also believes that Israel now has a critical chance to respond decisively against Iran's influence in the region. The columnist insisted that the response should not be contained or restrained and should aim to destroy the Iranian regime with near global support. The Washington Post highlighted Tuesday's attack, mentioning the U.S. response to what happened. Iran launched approximately 200 missiles at Israel in a surprise attack. According to the newspaper, the assault prompted widespread panic in Israel, with citizens seeking shelter as the Security Cabinet met to find a solution. In addition, the U.S. prepared to deploy forces for Israel's defense by intercepting Iranian missiles. Now, for more analysis, joining us now, Laurie Watkins, former advisor to Barack Obama, and Edmund Garib, professor of international relations at Georgetown University from Washington. Welcome both to In Depth on Q News. Now, Laurie, let's start with, how do you see this action last night? Why did Iran take this action? at this specific time after months of escalation?
Greetings to your viewers, Kareem, and thank you for having me on your program, and congratulations on the launch of the new network.
Thank you.
Yesterday, we saw, as your opening stated, that Iran took the bait against Israel and launched over 181 ballistic missiles. What I saw here in the United States and our national security partners was that this was another failure, just like it was back in April. Iran is trying to flex its muscle and power, and I don't think it was intentional that they didn't mean to reach the targets, civilian targets that they initially intended. So this showed countries like and allies like Saudi Arabia, the UAE, Jordan, etc., the capabilities or lack of capabilities of Iran. But what I am most concerned about is also the security and stability of Israel. Netanyahu, as we have seen over the past year, has taken a scorched earth approach to his strategy is just to try to wipe out all of the terrorist organizations, proxies, commandos, etc. But there is no long-term strategy. What does that also mean for the stability of the country and those people that live there? They are living in fear and terror every single day, just alongside the innocent Palestinians that continue to get killed. And now innocent Lebanese are also being caught in the crossfire. Is there an opportunity ever to go back to a democratic country, a democratic state? That is what is very unnerving here, is what is the long-term strategy and goal of Netanyahu?
Well, we should talk about this, and perhaps we should talk about the chances and opportunities of de-escalation in the region. But I just want to go to Professor Edmund here, and what are we looking at after last night's attack?
Well, clearly, the United States is basically trying to, at least publicly, they are saying they want to see a de-escalation. They wanted to see if they could reduce the tensions and the escalation that was beginning to appear in such a clear way in the region. Yet, at the same time, as Politico mentioned today, that the Biden administration's public calls for ceasefire in Lebanon, the White House was in fact, or its officials, people like Amos Hochstein, and Brett McGurk, told Israeli officials that they agreed with the plan to escalate in Lebanon and shift its focus to the north. The report basically, which Politico reported today, said that the United States plans were to focus on Lebanon, but they didn't offer much details. At the same time that we saw this, they were saying that they wanted to urge a cautious approach, while at the same time we saw what was happening. Thousands of Lebanese were killed. The leaders of Hezbollah were assassinated, while at the same time the administration was saying it wanted to see de-escalation. At the same time, we heard yesterday from the president that the attack by Iran was ineffective and had failed, more or less. Yet we are hearing from the administration and from the Israeli leadership that there have to be severe consequences. Where were the severe consequences when Israel was killing innocent children, Palestinian children, women, old men, and where were the consequences when Israel attacked Lebanese civilians using 2,000-pound bombs, several of these bombs, to wipe out whole blocks in Beirut, attacking villages in Lebanon and using phosphorus, white phosphorus, to make life impossible in the border area between Lebanon and Israel. So that raises a lot of questions about the policy of the United States. The U.S. had thought, or at least it appears that some of the advisors to the president felt that what Israel was doing, and if Israel could go after the leaders of Hezbollah, if Israel could take over part of Lebanon, some of the Israeli ministers want to annex southern Lebanon to Israel. And that shows, in fact, that how poor the administration is in understanding the regional equations and what's going on and what's likely to happen in the region. The Iranians did not want to see an escalation. They said if the U.S. reaches a ceasefire between Israel and Hamas, then we are not likely to see any kind of attack by Iran in retaliation for the assassination of Ismail Haniyeh and for other attacks that it took against Iran and Iranian targets. Yet, instead of that, we saw the U.S. continuing to provide financial support, $8.7 billion recently, add to what the U.S. had already given Israel. And there is still about almost another 8 to 9 billion. The whole budget is going to be about 17 billion was going to be given to Israel. So
let's take a moment to respond to that and to respond to your previous question. Now, Laurie, there was definitely the Biden administration was aware of possible escalation in the region, especially after the assassination of Hassan Nasrallah. What is the U.S. looking at right now, and what does the U.S. administration want in the coming hours? Does it support Israel in its defense just blindly, or is there a change of strategy in the coming hours based on the given outcomes?
Was that to me?
Yes, Laurie.
Hi. Yes, the strategy is going to be revealed. I can't answer that, nor can my fellow colleague answer that either. But we are paying attention to the briefings that are coming out. But I was somewhat disappointed, I will say, yesterday. And you had 3 briefings. You had one from the Pentagon, you had one from the White House, and then you had one from the National Security Advisor. And in all of those, when asked the question by journalists of, well, what will the United States do if U.S. troops are attacked, etc.? And the answer was, we will respond. And there was no specificity on what that response would look like. When pressed further, Jake Sullivan said, well, economic sanctions against Iran, we would destabilize and take away their nuclear program. How are you going to do that? The United States and our allies have been trying to minimize, de-escalate, whatever word you want to use, completely terminate Iran's capabilities to have a nuclear weapon. We also know that where that is located is extremely difficult and challenging to get to. And if it was as easy as everyone thinks, then probably Mossad Israel would have already dismantled and destroyed those facilities, but that has not happened. So I am going to be laser focused on what the United States says and then does in support of Israel, notwithstanding continuing to support through congressional actions and budget appropriations, allocations for more weapons of war, that at the same time that Israel is defending itself, which I support, many, many, many innocent civilians continue to be killed. And now to go into neighboring Lebanon and the thought of having military tanks rolling down the street of beautiful Lebanon into Beirut is unimaginable, and it takes us back to the Civil War. And I don't think anyone wants to go back there. But there are no guardrails on
Laurie,
Netanyahu,
what you said here has been stated many times by officials that nobody wants to see. Laurie, many officials have been saying that no one wants to see escalation. Nobody wants to see this conflict getting out of hand and into a full-fledged war. But however escalation is on the verge, we're seeing the officials always stating that it's a response, there's retaliation. So what do you think is going to happen, especially that Biden said that he will speak with Netanyahu about the response to the Israeli attack, and this could possibly take place anytime, perhaps in the next several hours. What do you think this phone call is going to hold, and what kind of retaliation are we expecting?
Well, during that call, I hope I can only tell you what I wish for, what I hope and expect to come out of the call, is that President Biden will ask for absolute trust communication and awareness of what is going on the ground, not having, come to the information after the fact, which we also heard over the weekend, that the last attack when Nasrallah was taken out, that the United States was not given a heads up about that. Whether or not that was true coming from the U.S. side, that is very concerning to me as a person that is in national security, and that if the United States, its closest ally to Israel, was not made aware, that's not good allyship and diplomacy. So I hope that is part of the message today, and that it is what is your strategy? What is your strategy, Netanyahu? What kind of attack? One, are you planning to launch? The severity of that, and what is your second and third order of effects that you anticipate happening after your attacks? That is going to affect the entire region. And absolutely the Biden administration, especially 35 days out from a US presidential election, does not want this at all creeping into any of the neighboring borders, anywhere continuing into the Gulf region. And this is absolutely concerning, but someone has to put some guardrails on Netanyahu, whether that's Biden, whether that is the leaders of our other countries and allies, but he needs to be reined in some way. And I'm not saying that Israel should not respond to Iran, but we all knew Iran was going to respond after Israel did what they did in taking out those Hezbollah and those terrorist proxies.
Right. Professor Edmond, if we look at the other side now, what do you think Iran's next move going to be?
I think Iran will be going to wait what the response to be. They had not any kind of direct engagement with Israel, although there had been numerous Israeli provocations. And so as a result of this, I think they will wait. But at the same time, they are also preparing for any kind of counterstrike, and perhaps especially if that strike was aimed at Iran's nuclear facilities. This is extremely dangerous because President Biden, when he came into office, he pointed to he said, we want to see an end to the period or the era of forever wars that were taking place in the region, and which cost the United States between $9 and $11 trillion. And the American people paid the price for that. And so it's a very, very dangerous situation. The president says that there will be severe consequences. The advisor to the president on national security affairs says there will be severe consequences. The Netanyahu, who always wanted to drag the United States into a war, and it seems that it's the tail that's wagging the dog in this case. And so there is a serious danger, because if we see escalation, this is likely to lead, first of all, especially if there were attacks against Iranian nuclear facilities and as well as its bases or its other targets inside Iran. We're likely to see Iran also attack U.S. forces in the region, maybe prevent oil facilities from operating also in the region, and that is going to make the whole world pay a price. So the dangers are extreme and very high, but unfortunately, States to calm the situation. They continue to provide support for Israel without pressuring Israel, as had been the case in a number of previous situations when Israel went too far. President Eisenhower, for example, the Israeli leadership refused to withdraw from Sinai after the 1956 invasion of Egypt. President Eisenhower was warned by friends of Israel that he could pay a price during the elections, yet he told them there would be no more support for Israel if Israel does not withdraw. While in the beginning there was resistance, they later got the message and withdrew. The same thing happened again on President Reagan. Reagan, during the invasion of Lebanon, what he saw happening in Beirut actually led them to tell the Israeli leadership, which was refusing to withdraw, that they would pay a heavy price, and the U.S. would no longer provide the support that they wanted. So they withdrew. George Bush Sr. also adopted similar policies. President Carter, President Kennedy. But unfortunately, the current leadership does not seem to have either the ability or the understanding of what's going on in the region. And they believe that continuing to provide support for Israel's aggression is the best way, while the U.S. and Israel are both becoming isolated internationally.
Okay, before we continue our discussion, let's take a look at the timeline of events leading to yesterday's attack. We'll be back after this. Now we're back with our guests for analyzing what happened yesterday and the possible escalations in the region. We have Laurie Watkins, former advisor to the former President of the United States, Barack Obama, and Professor Edmund Garib of International Relations at Georgetown University from Washington. Welcome again to In Depth. Now, we were talking about the possible scenarios in the region after yesterday's escalation. Professor Edmund, you were talking about what possible scenarios for Iran. Now, if we would like to compare the response between yesterday and the previous one in April by Iran, now definitely there were similar actions, but the most important thing is that the different weapons and the different timings and the time period that took the weapons actually to the missiles to actually reach Tel Aviv was significantly changed. What do you think of this display of weapons and power in such a specific time?
It is very interesting, actually. The Iranians used hypersonic and ballistic missiles, basically, and they hit different parts in Israel. We don't know enough about the targets, what was hit, what was the damage. Not to report on that, and also they asked the population at the same time also not to take pictures, photos, and not to talk about what happened. But clearly there was an escalation in the quality of weapons that were used. Also, the Iranians, during the previous attack, they basically telegraphed that they were going to attack. The West, also the U.S. with some of its allies, said that they would basically try to bring down some of these. And to a large extent, I think they were successful. Nevertheless, I think this was a message being sent to Israel and to a certain extent to the U.S. as well.
Right.
That Iran has the capability to reach Israel and that there would be a more severe response. But what's even more interesting is that, again, the Israelis the Iranians avoided attacking civilian areas, unlike what Israel has been doing, which is attacking civilians and killing civilians. They attacked mostly military targets, and these were in all parts, in various parts of Israel.
Right.
Sending a message they could reach inside Israel. So
now,
that,
right.
I think, very significant. Yeah.
Yeah. Laurie, in your opinion, what possible scenarios is there for Israel in a full-out war? Do you think Israel has gained also worldwide support and sympathy after Tuesday's attack? And would that be impactful in the coming hours and the coming days?
I think that there is sympathy for Israel in the fact that what they went through on October 7th